Knowing and having grit is what to do when deliberate practice feels too tough. When we do hard things and practice deliberately, we are bound to face times when all of the effort feels too tough. Becoming gritty is the answer to overcoming this. In building grit, you more readily face the challenges and frustrations of working towards mastering your craft. Hard times and setbacks are a part of the pursuit of mastery that we must learn to handle head on. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So what is the formula for this mental toughness that we call grit? The recipe for grit came from the scientists researching this trait in people who didn't give up easily, those who kept going despite challenges and setbacks. Angela Duckworth called this characteristic grit in the performers, from athletes to academics, who exhibited what it took to get through hard times and become uncommonly good at their field of expertise. Duckworth's formula is made up of two key traits that produce what it means to be gritty. Some people are born with this, others work hard to develop it. Passion and perseverance. Having passion is about developing a keen interest in the subject that you are pursuing mastery in, but it's not always the same feeling as getting giggly with joy when you are working on something. I came to understand that passion is about more than just fun when I was in school. We were doing an acid-base titration experiment, and the acid compound we had produced had dried up inside my beaker. Where there would usually be about 50 milliliters of liquid, it was completely dry. It wasn't clear why, as no one else had this problem and their titrations were going great. So my titration wasn't working at first to get the expected color change results that indicate the acid strength we were measuring. The solution was just clear after adding a bit of base, though, and as I swirled the beaker around, the color changed immediately to bright purple, and we were back on track. The acid that had evaporated was on the sides of the beaker with just enough liquid that it had mixed back into solution. My teacher was shocked by this resurrection of a seemingly failed experiment and said that I had passion. I thought this was an interesting way to complement the continued effort to get the desired results. It reframed what passion meant to me, not as just a joyful state of interest in something, but an intense commitment to the deeper craft and principles at hand. So that's what I think is the important takeaway of what passion really means. Now, this commitment is the other side of the grit coin, or as Duckworth labels it, it's more precisely perseverance. To keep going when times get hard. Seth Godin calls this the dip. It's the moment in your career path or whatever you're pursuing at a high level that becomes ridiculously hard and forces most people to quit. Organic chemistry class in university is a classic example of a dip. Organic chem happened to be the first midterm that I ever wrote in university, and I vividly recall that day. I was still cocky, thinking that I was the smart kid from high school, not cluing into the fact that every other kid in the exam building was also the smartest kid from their school too. I studied for that exam, but not hard enough, as I was about to find out. The moment that I looked at the exam's questions, I was shell-shocked. I had no clue, no proper understanding of the material to feel confident in any of my answers. There were 3 or 4 students writing that exam with me that were crying. That's when I realized the realness of the dip in university. I came away with a 60 on that exam, but to me that was a failure. It's what we do after we face that dip that defines our ability to persevere. When the work and effort gets hard and then it gets harder, you've got to keep fighting back. Do what you need to lick your wounds and regain your composure after you're rocked, but keep coming back. again and again. So that's what we classically think of as being gritty. And there are quizzes that you can take on Angela Duckworth's website about that grit score, particularly around perseverance. How willing are you to keep going when things get hard? And passion, that intense interest or that desire to learn more and really be engaged with what you're doing. But there are more ways to be gritty that I want to go into now, because this is what really takes building grit to that next level. In The Art of Impossible, Steven Kotler goes into even more ways than just passion and perseverance that we can be gritty and develop more grit. We'll save an in-depth conversation on each of these for another day. They are all of them inherent to the high flow lifestyle, but let's go into each of them so you know some of the ways that you can work on training these other ways to be gritty. There's the grit to recover. Grit is not all about pushing yourself until burnout. Because perseverance is defined by decades, recovery then becomes essential to that high performance life that lasts. Having the grit to recover means doing those things that are good for you, that you find help you to recharge when you need it. Float tanks, sauna, contrast therapy, going for a massage, all of these different recovery tools that promote active recovery and get you back to baseline quicker are things that help to develop this layer of grit. Then there's the grit to control your thoughts. It's really important to train focus and mindfulness. And if you can't control your thoughts, you're owned by distraction and not intentional enough with where you direct your time and energy. One of the best ways to train your thoughts is to either do any type of long endurance activities, exercises, where you're alone with just your thoughts for extended periods of time, or to start a meditation challenge like I talked about in this video here. Then there's the grit to overcome your weaknesses. Most people gravitate towards what they're naturally good at, but because mastery of any subject is complemented by a range of skills to fill in the gaps needed to be truly spectacular, you need to face your weaknesses head on to have real grit. Only you are going to know what these weaknesses are, and once you begin to assess and figure these out, you can create an action plan around working towards improving each of these areas. Then you want to be your best when you're at your worst. In The Last Dance documentary, the legend behind Michael Jordan's Game 5 playoff performance against the Utah Jazz got some new light. I remember I used to have a DVD box set of MJ's greatest performances that I would watch over and over again as I was playing basketball in high school. What we used to know or think about that game was that Michael had the flu, but still went on to play an unbelievable game. It turns out that MJ had food poisoning from a pizza delivery that in The Last Dance seems to be caused by a group of dedicated Utah fans sabotaging his food. Michael may have been puking before the game and collapsed on the sideline and had to be carried off by teammates as the buzzer went, but he still played an incredibly determined and gritty 38-point game to lead the team to victory. That's what it means to be your best when you're at your worst. And it's easy to use the sports example here, but think about what this means in your career or wherever you are practicing being gritty and working towards mastery. Steven Kotler talks about going on a hike up a mountain while carrying a weighted backpack while practicing a speech that he's about to do for a public speaking event. That's his way of turning this be your best at your worst into action for something like a public speaking or more of a knowledge work style of performance. So get creative and think about how you can also apply this extra layer of grit of being your best at your worst to whatever it is you're trying to really become exceptional at. So those are the two parts of the equation that Angela Duckworth describes grit as well as the 4 additional ones that we see from Steven Kotler. I think that we can add one extra level of grit to the equation. This is the grit to be uncommon amongst the uncommon. This is about developing the relentless attitude that Tim Grover talks about as being a cleaner. Michael Jordan was a cleaner, so was Kobe. These athletes were undeniably a cut above the rest of the NBA superstars who were already the best in the world at what they did. It's why MJ didn't take that night off when he had those flu-like symptoms that would have sidelined any other player. Grover works with a very particular and select type of athlete. Cleaners are the uncommon folk who start working before everybody else and keep working after the lights in the office go out at night. To be uncommon amongst the uncommon demands everything from you and more. To reach this state of uncommon skill starts by working on these other 6 aspects of grit and then asking yourself what it takes to get even more. And to learn more about how we get everything out of ourselves, check out this video next on how to enter the flow state.